$1 on the counter. The rain came down in sheets, a relentless drumming against the window panes of the last drop. It was the kind of storm that washes the city clean, blurring the neon signs into watercolors and forcing everyone indoors. Inside, the world was hushed, insulated from the tempest. The air smelled of old wood, spilled whiskey, and the faint, clean scent of ozone from the storm. Behind the bar, Grace moved with a quiet efficiency that was almost hypnotic. Her hands, steady and sure, polished a glass until it gleamed under the low, warm light. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was a comforting anchor in the dimly lit room. The clinking of ice, the gentle glug of bourbon from a bottle, these were the only sounds, a quiet symphony for the lonely. At the far end of the bar sat Frank Miller. He was a man carved from hardship, his face a roadmap of long days and longer nights. A half-empty glass of amber liquid sat before him, untouched for the last 10 minutes. His gaze was fixed on the window, but he wasn't really seeing the rain. He was looking at something far away, something lost in the rearview mirror of his life. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one that raged within him. He'd spent a lifetime building walls, and now he was the sole resident of his own fortress of solitude. A few stools down, Ethan Cole nursed a beer, the condensation tracing a wet ring on the polished mahogany. Ethan was younger, his face still holding the ghost of collegiate optimism, though it was fading fast. He'd come to the city with a guitar and a dream, but the city had a way of chewing up dreams and spitting them out. He'd played to empty rooms, his heart-filled lyrics swallowed by the indifference of strangers. Now, the silence of the bar felt more honest than any applause he'd ever chased. He took a slow sip, the bitter taste a familiar friend. Between them, a single empty seat separated them from Lena. She was a silhouette against the dim light, her features soft and indistinct. A book lay open on the bar, its pages untouched. She wasn't reading, she was listening. Listening to the rain, to the silence, to the unspoken stories hanging in the air. Lena had a gift for seeing the things people tried to hide. She saw the weight on Frank's shoulders, the disappointment in Ethan's eyes. She understood that sometimes the most profound connections are made in shared silence, in the simple act of being present in the same quiet room. The only currency on the bar was a single, crumpled dollar bill. It lay there, a forgotten offering, between Frank and Ethan. It had been there when they arrived, a silent invitation. The minutes stretched on, each one a thread in the tapestry of the quiet evening. Grace continued her work, her movements a slow, deliberate dance. She glanced at the three figures at her bar, her patrons of the storm. She knew their types, if not their names. The city was full of them, souls adrift, seeking a temporary harbor. Her bar was more than a place to drink. It was a sanctuary, a place where you could just be, without expectation or judgment. Finally, Frank stirred. His eyes moved from the window to the dollar bill on the counter. It was creased and worn, having passed through countless hands, each with its own story. He looked at Ethan, then at Lena. He didn't say a word. He simply pushed the dollar bill slowly across the bar, nudging it towards the center. Ethan watched the bill's slow journey. He understood the gesture. It wasn't about the money. It was about breaking the silence, not with words, but with something else. He met Frank's gaze for a fleeting moment, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Then, with a gentle push of his own, he sent the dollar continuing its slide down the bar until it stopped in front of Lena. Lena looked down at the dollar. A faint smile touched her lips. She didn't need to ask. She knew what it was for. She picked it up, its texture soft and familiar, and slid off her stool. Her movements were graceful as she walked over to the old jukebox in the corner, a relic from another time, its chrome trim and glowing lights a stark contrast to the bar's subdued atmosphere. She fed the dollar into the machine. There was a satisfying mechanical whir, a click, and then a moment of anticipation. She pressed two buttons. making her selection not just for herself, but for the room. The first few notes of a soulful, bluesy tune filled the space. It was a song about rain and heartbreak and finding a little bit of light in the darkness. The music didn't shatter the quiet. It deepened it, gave it a voice. It wrapped around them, a warm blanket against the cold of the storm. Frank closed his eyes, leaning his head back. The melody seemed to find the cracks in his armor, not to break them, but to seep in gently, offering a moment of truce. The music spoke of a shared human experience, a sorrow that was universal, and in that there was a strange comfort. He wasn't so alone in his fortress after all. Ethan listened, his fingers tapping a soft, unconscious rhythm on his beer bottle. The song was everything he tried to write: honest, raw, and beautiful. It wasn't about clever rhymes or catchy hooks. It was about feeling. It reminded him why he'd picked up a guitar in the first place. Not for the applause, but for the connection, for the chance to make someone, somewhere, feel understood. Lena returned to her stool, her book still open, still unread. She sipped her water, watching the way the music changed the atmosphere. It was a small thing, a single song on a stormy night, but it was enough. It had connected them, three strangers and a bartender, in a way that conversation never could have. They were no longer just lonely individuals. They were a collective, sharing a moment of quiet communion. Grace leaned against the back bar, a small, knowing smile on her face. She'd seen this happen before. The magic of a bar wasn't in the alcohol. It was in the moments like this, when the noise of the outside world faded away, and all that was left was the simple, profound truth of human connection. The song played on, its final notes lingering in the air like the scent of rain. For a few seconds after it ended, the silence that returned was different. It was fuller, warmer. The unspoken tension had dissolved, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. Then, as if on cue, a deafening clap of thunder shook the building. The lights flickered, casting the room in a strobe of light and shadow before settling back into their steady, warm glow. The storm was reaching its peak. The moment was broken. It was time to go. Frank was the first to move. He placed a few bills on the counter, more than enough to cover his drink. He gave Grace a nod, a silent thank you that she returned with one of her own. He pulled on his coat and walked to the door, not looking back. As he stepped out, a gust of wind and rain swept into the bar, a brief, cold reminder of the world outside. Then the door clicked shut, and he was gone, swallowed by the night. Next was Ethan. He finished his beer in one long swallow, the last of his dream-chasing fuel for the night. He left his payment on the bar and gave Lena a small, almost shy smile. "Good song," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "It's one of my favorites," she replied softly. He nodded, then turned and headed for the door, his guitar case in hand. He walked out into the storm, not with the weight of failure, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The city was still indifferent, but tonight he felt a little less alone in it. Now it was just Lena and Grace. Lena closed her book, the story inside still unread, but a new one written in the silence of the bar. She gathered her things and walked to the door. "Stay safe out there," Grace said, her voice warm. "You too, Grace," Lena said, and then she too stepped out into the rain, disappearing into the wet, shimmering streets. Grace was alone again. She collected the empty glasses, her movements just as deliberate as before. The bar was quiet once more, but the echo of the song, of the shared moment, remained. She wiped down the counter, erasing the water rings and the ghosts of her patrons, preparing the space for the next souls who might wander in from the storm. The rain continued to fall, a steady rhythm against the glass, and inside the last drop, the night waited. Thank you for watching.